And we're recording. Okay. Duty's taken care of. So just to make sure you see my PowerPoint slide, right? Okay, thanks. And I changed the date to 2021. I bet I missed that in the past. Okay, so for those who are just jumping in as our panelists here, the meeting is live, also live on Facebook. So Chris, when it hits the moment, let me know and I'll do the promo screens.
Gary, one more for you. You know what Adam said to Eve on December 24th?
No, Phil.
It's Christmas, Eve.
Jeez.
Sorry, it's not 6 o'clock yet.
Now I know I'm not running again.
All right, Todd, it's 6 o'clock.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the new year and our January 4th Village Board meeting. Just a few basics before we kick things off. There we go. So for those public who are in attendance, thanks for joining us. You're muted. However, there is a public comment section included in the agenda. And when that time comes, and if you care to speak, you'll be invited to virtually raise your hand by clicking the button on your Zoom screen. When you do, I'll be able to see that and I can bring you in the order that hands are raised. Those public comment sections allow 2 minutes per attendee for public comments. We do have closed session this evening is expected. And just a kind of a heads up on how that's going to work. All of the board members are going to essentially leave this Zoom meeting and go into a different Zoom meeting. I will be putting up this screen during that period of time. So this Zoom meeting will keep on running, but it will be the only screen you see. We will return then after closed session. Okay, for board members and our presenters, by the way, I do see Chris and Kevin on an attendee side. I will bring you in when your item is up, so don't worry. I know you're not in as a panelist yet, but you will be. But for all those attending, you are also muted, I'm sorry, board members and presenters, please remain muted unless you need to participate. Mute your video unless you're participating on an agenda item, except for board members, who we should see all the time. When board discussion occurs, the village president will call on board members to physically raise your hand like this if you have a question, and then he'll call on you, and then all votes will still be taken by roll call. So with that, I will turn it over to Caitlin for roll.
I'll call the meeting to order. It's January 4th, 2021. Happy New Year to everyone. Caitlin, now you can take the roll.
Yep, no problem. Nyla Fry,
Here.
Gary Hertzberg,
Here.
Aaron Moran,
Here.
Bill Ranum, Kristen Runge,
Here.
Phil Willems,
Here.
Chris Zellner.
Here. Thanks, Caitlin. Next, we have confirmation of open meeting compliance, public postings, official notices, and online availability. Caitlin, please.
I can confirm that the final agenda was posted at all 3 village posting locations on December 31st. The final agenda and packet were made available online on December 31st as well.
Thank you. Next, we have consent agenda. Would anybody like anything pulled, or I'd look for a motion on the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, motion by Kristen Runge. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Gary Hertzberg. Any other comments? Okay, roll call vote. Caitlin, please.
Nyla Fry,
Yes.
Kristen Runge,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Gary Hertzberg.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next we have public comment. For anyone who would like to make any comments, whether the item be on or off the agenda, this is your opportunity. And if you'd like to, please raise your hand and Todd will bring you in.
Okay, so I again click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen.
Caitlin's got her hand up.
Can I do a public comment?
Yes, you can.
Just a reminder, a couple of reminders. First, the second meeting in January is going to be on Tuesday, January 19th, because the 18th is MLK Day, and that is observed as an official village holiday. So please make sure your calendars reflect that. And second, tomorrow at 5 p.m. is the deadline for any candidates seeking local office this year to have their nomination papers into the clerk's office. I will be at Village Hall until 5 tomorrow. People are instructed to place their nomination paperwork in the drop box outside of Village Hall since we are closed. But if someone requires an appointment, they should email or give me a call and we can set up an appointment. Thanks.
Thanks, Caitlin. Anyone else? Todd, anybody?
Nope, there's no hands.
Okay, then we're going to move on from public comment to our first item under new business discussion and update regarding COVID-19 pandemic. Todd, are you taking that?
Well, I see that Scott Russell's here from EMS, and he's kind of given us a few updates. We'll remind the board I'm sending out weekly the updates as I get them from Dane County following the Monday afternoon phone calls. So that's a good place to get the latest and greatest info for the Dane County impacts. Scott, what's happening around our parts here?
Yeah, first of all, Todd, thanks for sending that out to the board. He's right. That's the best place to see all the up-to-date stuff. I think the big point of emphasis on this is we are trending the right way, both in Dane County as well as locally. As far as the patients and whatnot that we're seeing and hearing about, those numbers are drastically down, which is a true testament to everybody kind of doing their part, especially over the holidays and whatnot. We just aren't seeing the numbers that we were the past month and a half to 2 months. So that's been pretty good. Other than that, and trying to avoid just reiterating what Todd already emailed out, I do want to take the opportunity to give a shout out to Carrie Meyer from the county and the whole county public health system for they were able to get our whole department vaccinated last week. An absolute huge undertaking for them to be able to get us that far up in line and in and through. As far as I know, there was only a couple of people that opted out of it, but otherwise everybody's been through, and we're just waiting the next round of it. Starting next week, they're going to, actually might even be later this week, going to be starting to hit the nursing home residents and nursing home caregivers. That's all being done up at the Lion Energy Center. I just got an email about a half hour ago that the Moderna vaccine should be showing up later this week as well. So things are definitely moving along. There's definitely an end in sight. So things are looking up. Hopefully by about next Christmas, we can start living a normal life again. So But yeah, other than that, everything's been doing great here. Thank you to everybody for kind of doing their part. I know it's been a tough holiday, but I think we made it through okay. So now we just got to get through the rest of 2021, I guess. Is it too early to start the countdown? I don't know.
I will mention that the village is monitoring in terms of our own staff and the process for immunizations and what we can or can't do in terms of requiring staff or not. I'll be talking with the department head team tomorrow about that and discuss whether there's some ways that we can encourage or how best to approach that with our employees. So Kayla and I will be discussing that with our management team tomorrow and thinking about going forward. I also offer a shout out to all of our departments who are doing their best to manage during these unique times. Sue and her team at the Village Center and Cindy at the Senior Center have certainly modified and jumped through hoops to make things work as best possible. I do know that the library, I think it's next week, Aaron, maybe you know from the library board, I think it's next week they're hoping to do another level of opening.
I think it's the 11th.
And do you know what sort of extent of reopening they're planning?
It should be pretty much where we were at in November before we closed. So I'm pretty sure browsing, a limited time.
Yeah, limited browsing.
Or coming in to get your pickups, but all the, curbside and the drive-up window and everything will still be in use for people.
Okay, but staff across the organization have want nothing more than to be back serving people the way we're used to serving them. So that's what we're eager for. And the fact that Scott's suggesting there's a light at the end of the tunnel, wherever that end is, we're eager to get there too. Any questions about COVID items? I think I'm not ready to spring right into normal activity in terms of village board meetings and committees back to normal. I definitely want us to take our time cautiously with that, but again, eager to be back to that process of meeting too. But I'll probably touch base with Bill Ranum to get his take on how best to approach that or his opinion on that.
All right, thank you, Todd. Thanks, Scott. Make sure you thank your staff as well for all that they've done during this time. So we appreciate it. Okay, next we have discuss and take action on organizational review of engineering and public work department, including a presentation by Public Administration Associates. Todd?
And I'm bringing in Chris Schwartz and Kevin Bruner to join us. Chris and Kevin are part of the team from Public Administration Associates. Last year at budget time, full-blown year ago, the board approved funds to perform a study of aspects of the organization in the areas of engineering and public works, even facility management. And we also studied community development functions, which are intertwined with engineering. And Chris and Kevin have completed their study and are going to give you a presentation this evening on those results. Following their presentation, certainly we'll take whatever Q&A you might have, because we definitely want to have a clear understanding of what the questions might be or what has to be clarified. But after that, Caitlin and I are prepared to present, I guess, what I would call a kind of a draft approach to implementation. Again, draft is the key word here. We want to hear from you, and Caitlin and I are working with staff to get feedback from them as well, beginning by this same presentation given to some of the staff team earlier today. The intent would be for this to not be acted upon this evening, but have this carried over to your next meeting, and frankly, as many meetings as it takes for us to arrive at the direction we plan to take. But I plan to use your feedback here and the feedback from staff to help sort of refine what administration is eventually going to be finally recommending to the board. But with that, I'd like to turn over to Chris and Kevin. I'm going to run PowerPoint from the background and allow them to introduce themselves and walk through the PowerPoint.
Thank you, Todd. I don't know if you have my video. I'm not sure my video is popping up,
I
but
wonder if I have to, let's see, there we go. I'll do that for Chris
Yeah.
too.
yeah, we need to start it. Okay, got it.
There we go.
Good evening,
Good to see you
everyone.
guys.
Oh,
Yes. Good evening, Village Board. My name is Kevin Brunner, and I'm a partner in Public Administration Associates with Chris Schwartz. And we're pleased to have been working with the village staff on this particular organizational review. Just briefly, our firm has been in existence about 25 years. We have about 15 associates that work across the state of Wisconsin on consulting projects like this. We do executive recruitment, we do interim staffing, we do a lot of different things. And we're very, again, very pleased to be able to have worked with the village of Waunakee on this particular project. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the process that we took. And then I'm going to turn over to Chris to go through some of the recommendations. First of all, we were charged with analyzing your engineering, public works, and community development functions, and which included looking at your organizational structure, your job descriptions, the operational processes, and by looking at all those, we have provided you with some recommendations for possible consideration in improving organizational efficiency and effectiveness. We realize that one of your values in the village of Waunakee is continuous improvement, and so periodically looking at your operations like you have is a very good thing, we think. Good organizations are continually refining and improving how they do things. So it's also timely in that I know that you're conducting succession planning. You are also recently updated your capital financing plan, and you are in the midst of implementing your long-range comprehensive land use plan. And by all accounts, your continued growth residentially and commercially is projected to remain very vibrant and robust going forward. So that needs a lot of continued infrastructure and project management, which are really key functions of village government. Our process was pretty straightforward, and again, because of COVID, we weren't able to do a lot of what we would call boots on the ground analysis. We did conduct a series of interviews with your staff. We also interviewed Village President Zellner. We also interviewed your contract engineer and planner. We reviewed your job descriptions and organizational relationships, reviewed your policies and procedures and your work processes. And we also took a good hard look at your comprehensive planning documents, because especially within the realm of community development and even public works and engineering, that's very important context to look at your operations through. We also reviewed your capital budgets, and we also, a very important part of this was to look at other cities and villages that have, they're kind of your peer communities, and we wanted to look at their best practices and how they operate their engineering, public works, and community development functions. So that's kind of an overview of what we did and our processes. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris now to talk a little bit about what we found out.
great. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Todd, and village president, village trustees. Excuse me, my voice is a little sore today. So the page 5 of the PowerPoint just shows your current organization. And as you can see, it's from a management standpoint, it's not it's very thin, very streamlined was the word I'm looking for. You have the village administrator, and then the director of public works, engineering who also does the community development functions. And you do contract a lot, not a bad thing. You know, for you, it's been working wonderfully according to your staff over the years. That contracted services is planning and zoning, building inspection, and of course, engineering. You have an engineer's office manager who does an amazing amount of work, and a construction manager who helps, kind of serves as besides construction management, provides a lot of technical assistance to the staff and the operations. And then on the operations side, you have the street park superintendent, a foreman, and your crew members. So that's the current organization for these functions. As you know, I just wanted to, I think it's important that we at least go over that. So the analysis process, I just wanted to, as Kevin said, we looked at and evaluated the peer community engineering, public works, and community development operational structures. I'll talk about who they were in a bit. And also we talked to, as part of our interviews and our analysis, we looked at the organizational structures, process, policies, and planning, and financial planning and policies that are all related to engineering, public works, and community development functions. So, and in the study, you'll see that detailed analysis. So one of the things we wanted to make sure in talking with Todd is that, you know, we have some, you know, what should we focus? What are the goals that we really should, you know, assure that we, that a new organization or revised organization meets? And we wanted to assure that a community development related functions are aimed at proactive implementation of the comprehensive land use plan. We think that's a very important aspect of anything you do, any changes, that is first and foremost, as well as establishing a consistent and transparent process for guidance and evaluation of private development. The processes that you get from somebody who is interested in private development to actually boots in the ground and digging holes for development. Making sure that resource sharing is looked at across municipal departments, and maybe increase formal partnerships with the Waunakee utilities. And then lastly, strengthening the effectiveness of personnel and contract oversight required for the management of the organizational functions. So how do we improve that oversight of personnel and the contractors, which is very important. So those were kind of our overarching goals that we talked about. Now, the survey of peer communities, we looked at 14 communities that were similar to Waunakee to varying degrees. In the report, I kind of explain what their growth patterns are, what part, you know, where are they now in their history. So you can read that aspect. We think it's very important to see what the best practices out there in an organization when we do these kinds of studies. And I don't know if Kevin mentioned, but we have done, you know, a pretty fair amount of these organizational studies, both in the public works and community development, as well as fire and other organizations. So we find that using the peer, you know, what the peer communities and the best practices is one of the better ways to get at that. So if you look at the peer communities, their kind of organizational standard, as I put it, the public works director, sometimes the public works director / engineer, it depends on the community, is separated from the community development function. So you have two department heads running two separate departments. And again, if you remember your organization, they are together under the Public Works Director, Village Engineer. So, which some communities of the peer communities reviewed still have that structure, but it's not the most common. So, and again, I didn't get into who contracts or who doesn't contract. To me, it was important to just look at what those peer communities organizations look like. So under the community development, you usually had community development who also did economic development support. And then you have the planning and zoning, the building inspection, as well as the economic development, as I said. And then the Public Works Director, usually village engineering's under that, and then obviously the operations. Again, I put, there's some communities that have utilities under the Public Works Department, and some have it under a utility organization like you have. You have a separate utility that is separate from the village board. So the next part of this is really, what is a big picture organizational structure? And again, as Kevin said, that we looked at this as a 20,000 foot view of your organization. Though there's some good detail in there, I wanted to just highlight some of the recommendations here. And you'll look similar to the peer communities. We believe you should look at having that community development director separate from the Public Works Director, and managing their own functions under community development. You'll have the planning, zoning, building inspections, and an engineering function. And you also have an office manager, which you have now. Much of the office manager's position supports community development functions, as well as serves as the administrative assistant for the Public Works Director. Village engineer. So under the Public Works Director, we have an engineering tech, which is very similar to the construction manager. Again, that's going to be tweaked as you study this, and as Todd looks at it and discusses that with his department heads and department staff, how he wants to look at that. We saw that the engineering tech was something, a position that was relatively more common than the construction engineering type. And then obviously the Public Works has contracted engineering service under their tent as well. It could be the same engineers, just they have the ability to call the engineer on an independent basis. And if you look at the staff work, we're long-term, you may want to look at a street park superintendent plus and a foreman, though Todd will talk about that now, or later, that one of those positions may not be required at first, may not be required at all in the future, but something you have to look at. If you'll notice also under the streets and park super, under the Public Works Director, you have a facility management position. I put one FTE, could be have other staff under them, but we want to talk about that. I'll have Kevin talk about that a bit. Currently, the facility management is allocated across departments, and many of your buildings have their own maintenance folks. So what I want to do is just briefly summarize what I just said in that on the next page. And you'll see, the separate positions of Public Works and Community Development Directors and Economic Development Coordination to the Community Development position. So separate positions of Community Development Directors and the Public Works Engineer. We believe that is the best practice, and that you've had the same organization. Kevin said 1996, and even prior to that, it worked from what we, can tell, has worked fine. You've done a wonderful job in your community. But, continuous improvement, looking at separating those positions may give you, more assets in your organization. Kevin, why don't you talk a little bit about consolidation of facility management positions? Kevin?
One of the things that we're suggesting you look at is your possibility of consolidating your facility management with one manager to serve across all departments, an internal service department, if you will. Right now, the village is pushing almost 200,000 square feet of space that you have in your various facilities. That doesn't include utilities, but it's almost at a tipping point or a critical mass that you should consider consolidating that and focusing the management and accountability for the maintenance as well as the capital improvements necessary for your facilities in one person. We think there could be significant value added by looking at the creation of such a position like that in the future. I think that pretty well covers that, Chris, if you want to go to the office.
Sure. And the last point is that the engineering office manager position transitions to both serve the community development functions and the public works functions. So, there'd be a little bit of an increase in work in that position. But we don't believe there's need for two separate administrative assistant office manager type positions. Many communities can do it under one, and I think Waunakee would be able to do that as well. And then, as I mentioned in here, just tweaking maybe that position of construction manager to a engineering tech position it should be looked at it as well. Again, this is all about, thinking about future organizational structures as part of the whole succession planning and continuous improvement. And we also put some technical recommendations for you as part of maybe that can be supplemental to the organizational changes that you may do. There's some technical aspects that technical organizational things you can do to improve the effectiveness of the organization. So take a look at those. That's all I have. Unless Todd, you wanted me to comment on anything else?
I think a good pause moment here to see if the board has specific questions on the work that you did or your findings. And then again, Caitlin and I want to talk a bit about how we may consider a process for implementation going forward. So, board members? Nyla? Chris, you're muted, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm
Oh,
not.
no, other Chris.
Oh, that's me. That's sorry, Chris. That's this Chris.
Okay.
We're on the board based on who's listed here. So Nyla, you actually are in the top right. So go ahead. You're muted though, Nyla. Nyla, you're muted. There you go.
Okay, just a couple questions to clarify things for me. What's the difference between an engineer and an engineering tech?
Question. When we look at organizations that have an engineer, it's really a full-blown, if you will, engineer with an engineering degree. And where a tech is usually someone who has a 2-year degree, just from a term of art, I'm saying. It's just the engineer has more education in design, things of that sort. An engineering tech understands all the concepts of engineering, but can't stamp plans, can't draft major plans, etc. not to say that there can't be an engineer in that position. It may be overkill depending on because your contractors are, doing a pretty thorough job. But it can go either way. We thought an engineering tech has the skills to help community development functions as well as the public works functions as well.
And then one other question. At what point does a municipality look at hiring their inspectors?
That's a really good question that a lot of, as a manager, I've looked at that many, many times. And I always did a cost analysis. And many times I had our community development director do a cost analysis every couple of years, 2 or 3 years, to say, tell me about the permits. Are we making money? Are we, losing money? How much is it really costing us? I've always liked contracting because it kind of expands and contracts depending on your volume of business. However, in some older organizations, older being fully developed communities, they found that the in-house tended to be a little bit more cost effective and consumer friendly. So it's really about evaluating that on a regular basis. It's all over the board in communities. And I've studied this a lot over time, and there's not a real good consensus. I can tell you that most communities that I'm familiar with these days at your size is doing contracting. But, there's exceptions to that.
Okay, next we have, I'm assuming you're done, Nyla, because you have mute. Gary Hertzberger.
Yeah, my only, based on sitting in on engineering staff meetings, tech meetings, when we're doing a street project or we're doing a development, I've sat in those meetings, and my big concern, and it's been this way for a couple of years, I think a number of us, that, we have so much knowledge, but that core group of people, engineer, it's Kevin, it's Jim, you got Dave Drazen at utilities, Randy at the water utility. There's so much knowledge from what we've done in the past. It's amazing to sit in those meetings and listen to them guys, figure out an issue based on what they did 10 years ago on a project. So my concern, as at least this model, I get somewhat concerned that we get accused sometimes of using consultants too much. I disagree with that. We've had a very strong relationship with Strand, and they would be a consistent force going forward with us. Yet, I think our consulting costs under this model may go up dramatically. And my concern with consultants is their job, if they're a good consultant, is to bill more hours. Because they don't work for the village, they work for the consulting company. So those are some of my concerns right now, but I'm open to, listen and try to figure out the best solution.
Thanks, Gary. Welcome, Bill Random, to the meeting, by the way. I just saw you join. Next on our screen is Kristen Runge.
I don't have any questions. Thanks.
And then next is Phil Willems.
No questions right now.
Okay, Aaron Moran.
I don't have any questions, but thank you for your presentation and study.
Thank you.
Bill Random, any questions? I know you just joined, so I don't want to put you in a spot here.
Sorry, I just joined.
So question I have, pretty simple one, I think, for you is you mentioned that our current process is very streamlined. And generally, I would think that a streamlined process would be a good process. You often hear within government that there's a lot of bureaucracy, and my concern would be, are we creating bureaucracy within the model that you're proposing? But it seems like we're adding quite a few different layers in there. So that would be something that I would want us to address and answer at some point here. Next, I would go with what Gary commented on. We've been fortunate that we've had the same people for many, many years, that they know what's happened throughout the village and as far as engineering goes, and whether it's water utilities, you name it, those people have been there. They're all at their, well, not all of them, but most of them are close to their retirement times. And so this is probably very much and why we went about this process appropriate to venture down this road. So my really only question is, looking at the other communities, are we adding a lot of bureaucracy with this?
I very much dislike bureaucracy, in my time as a city manager, and I think you're just adding a position that is needed in your organization as you go forward. You're not raising this, putting a lot of additional cost in there at this point, which Todd will discuss. I don't see that. In talking to the communities, follow-ups, it works pretty well. I don't think you're obviously adding a new position. And if you equate that with bureaucracy, you may be right, but I think it works pretty well out there in the world with this model.
Okay. And Todd, maybe you can address, and I see that Sue McDade is on this call too. Would she be in this as part of this with what her roles and functions are?
Well, I think jumping in, I think in Sue's role, she, especially when it comes like to parks and parks development, there's an interaction between engineering, public works, and then community services in that playing out within the organization. I don't think that necessarily changes a whole lot. I think there's still a role for community services to play in planning of our parks development. Kayla and I are going to present sort of a phased approach for you that doesn't jump right into the notion of a centralized facility management function, but I think that's where today the way facility management works is we have dedicated staff at the village center, we have a dedicated staff at the library. There's a little bit of a crossover, but not a ton. And then the other departments are left with either contracted cleaning services or getting help from public works occasionally to help with some of our facility needs. So I think when it comes to an internal service of facility management, that's when we're going to be talking more to, across departmentally and the impacts on departments like Sue's and the library, and how does it all end up fitting together as a centralized service. But as you'll see in a moment, Caitlin and I think we need to settle into other elements of structural change first before we jump into facility management changes.
Okay, those are all of my questions. Kevin, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to address Mr. Hertzberg's a question, I think, and also your question as well, Village President. A couple of our technical recommendations, I think, address that. One of the things is that we think that all communities should have updated standard operating procedures. We find a lot of communities, they have so much institutional knowledge. They've got people who have been working in the field and for years, and then they retire, and all of that, there's a vacuum that's lost. And so putting some of that on paper in terms of standard operating procedures is very important. The same thing would happen with your GIS system, with making sure you have up-to-date as-built information for all your utility street information. So that's another thing that we include it as one of the technical recommendations. I think the other thing is, you rely, quite a bit on contracted services, particularly engineering, but you also have contracted planning services. And we also think that it's just a good business practice to periodically, make sure that you're getting the best bang for the buck, and that you solicit RFPs for those services periodically. I know I work with Strand; they're a wonderful engineering firm, but I actually, and I don't know if they're listening in here, but when I was in Whitewater, Wisconsin, as the city manager, we went out for bid after many years with Strand, and it was miraculous how our hourly rates went down $10 to $15, $20 per hour when we added a competition to the process. So anyway, that's something we would suggest that you look at as well.
And yes, our Strand engineer is listening in.
Okay. Well, I'm just telling you, that's what happened.
I'll prepare for the email from him tomorrow.
Right. Well, no, it just happened, and actually what happened was there were less senior engineers that were assigned that could just do the job as well as some of the seniors, so that's all.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yep.
Board members, any other questions? If there are, raise your hand and I will call on you. Okay, then I'm going to say thank you to Kevin and Chris for your comments and your presentation this evening. Todd and Caitlin, you have a presentation you're going to give us, it sounds like. So
yeah, let me share my screen here. Caitlin, I'll let you walk through this implementation. One thing I want the board to know, and the staff and those listening, that I'd like to view this again, certainly in draft form. We're looking for feedback. This isn't a definitive statement from administration. And I also want everybody to know that that we see this as something that we can phase in. What you saw from Chris and Kevin presented is something I would call sort of a good aspirational organizational goal for us to move towards. But to jump at it right out of the gate, I think could be a little dangerous, if not, well, difficult, certainly difficult, if not dangerous for the organization. So I think there's reason to take our time. Caitlin will explain some of that when she discusses how we might consider phasing that in. So here you go, Caitlin.
Okay, thanks, Todd. So Todd is putting up on the screen the organizational review of a budget impact of our incremental approach to implementing this proposal. So that top part, you'll see our current budget for our current structure of public works and engineering. The middle section is reorganization recommendation, and this is where you're going to see the things that Todd and I think incrementally we should be doing first from this proposal. The top line is the implementation of the community development director, public works director, and then the public works and development office manager, the engineering tech position, and a public works foreman. As you see there, we're not recommending to implement a foreman and a superintendent at this time underneath the public works director, just the foreman position, which is a position we currently have and that is filled. In the spirit of collaboration, we have had a conversation with Waunakee Utilities. There is interest to collaborate from Waunakee Utilities on the engineering tech position. They think that they can find great value in using that position as well, and are inclined to help support that position at 25%. Comparing the current budget to the reorganization budget, you'll see that there is a budget savings. We are proposing as administration to use some of that budget savings to create a communications manager position. This is another position that has been discussed by department heads and something that is seen as the real value and need for our organization at this time. As we continue to grow, having someone whose basic job is to do all of our communications, make sure that the message across all departments is the same, be proactive rather than reactive. This communications manager position can touch every part of our organization, and it's another position that the utility also sees value in and is willing to participate in that position at 25%. Some of the assumptions taken into this graph, the numbers above reflect a full fiscal year. The reorganization, the hourly rates for the reorganization are based on the salary survey the village completed last year with GovHR, and a recently completed salary survey done by Middleton, that one was completed by Baker Tilly. The assumption also assumes every employee accepts all benefits at the level of family, and that there are 2 joint positions with the utility, the engineering tech, and the communications manager. Other items this chart assumes the promotion of Bill Frederick to the position of Public Works Director. This would transition him from an hourly overtime eligible employee to salary. Up on the top part for his Public Works Superintendent position up there, we did factor in his overtime when we did this budget analysis. It includes a grade adjustment for Tracy Meinholz to take that elevated position of Public Works and Development Office Manager. And it also assumes a grade adjustment for Rick Moran, our current foreman, to continue that position. But with Bill taking on the leadership role of Public Works Director, we anticipate Rick will have some more day-to-day management responsibilities of the team that he doesn't see right now. So with all of that, as you can see in front of you, we are projecting with this incremental suggestion of change and the addition of a communication manager position, we are still projecting a budget savings with this reorganization. I also wanted to say that this chart has been reviewed by Renee Meinholz for accuracy of the numbers, because I'm sure that's going to be a question, but the finance director did see this. So Todd, anything? I'll turn it over to you now.
No, that's good, Kaylin, and another good moment for pause to get. And I'll leave this up while we talk, if that's okay, to get questions from the village board, or perhaps questions about how questions that might intertwine our consultants with this particular discussion. Bill, I saw your hand.
So I'm behind here. Obviously, the engineer services, because as my understanding is that a lot of the projects you have to have an engineer sign it off. Is that what we're talking about? Where is the engineer in the, do we still have an engineer of our own, or is it separate?
It would, this proposal, yes, you missed that, Bill, but it's good that you're going to catch up with us. That would be a consulting function. And I guess my question maybe to Kevin, even he's on with us, would be how often is, I don't know what you call it, engineer stamp, an engineer seal sort of thing utilized in your daily work in the role as you currently perform it with the village?
That's a super loaded question that'd be really hard to answer without really putting some thought to it, but substantial. I mean, I think if you're looking at when they provided you a list, I think the majority of that organizations that they had engineers on staff. I think there's a few on there that don't have engineers on staff. And I think that what you'd really want to do is understanding what the cost is, which they're showing, not having an engineer, but what's the outside costs of those engineering fees?
No, that's my next question, because I don't think it'll be small. I think it'll be enormous, because the engineering doesn't come for, the organization will collect its piece too, as you hire your engineer at every level. And I don't see it in the budget here, so I'm looking for it in the budget. Where's the piece that says the anticipated cost for that engineering?
Do we know what Fran charges an hour?
But Gary, it would vary, depending on the level of the person. So, that's, it would, it'd vary from, an engineering tech of somewhere around, $85 for a new tech to, probably 175 to a high level tech. And then an engineer would vary from, probably 150 for an entry level engineer to, upwards of $250 an hour for a seasoned engineer. And I'm not against consultants. I'm retiring at some point here in 2021, and we'll switch over to that side. And there's nothing wrong with consultants.
So Todd, is it in the budget somewhere else? I mean, an estimate somewhere?
Well, engineering consulting exists in our budget now. What we did not, well, I guess maybe I'd turn that over to Kevin and Chris, our consultants, because I know you did give some thought in your technical comments to the issues regarding engineering consulting participation in our daily work, including planning and planning consultants as well. But guys, what do you imagine or foresee us experiencing in a change like this?
Maybe I take a look at that. I believe in the 2 years we looked at, you're spending around 400,000 for outside contract engineering, and your net is about 250,000. If you did not have an in-house engineer, you obviously need your some of the services that Kevin's providing now have to be provided elsewhere. They have to be provided through a contract source. So you'd have to do an analysis of what that impact would be on your outside engineering and what the net cost to the city or to the village would be. But that's a very good point. You need to really analyze, if you're not going to have that in-house service, what is it going to cost you? And are there, for example, if you have a community development director, would there be some offsetting costs for planning, for example? Some of that planning would be done in-house as opposed to being done on a contractual basis. I think you really have to do a much more detailed analysis of both of those functions to see, what your net cost is going to be.
And we can dig into that much more closely over the next couple of weeks. I mean, I guess going back to Kevin, I know there's a lot behind the questions here. There's a lot to this whole thing, but to the specific question of, Kevin, even you're not stamping our construction plans. I don't believe. I believe that engineering, that final engineering move, so to speak, has been performed by our consulting engineers. But I apologize if I'm wrong, and I want to be corrected if I'm wrong. I give you permission to correct me if I'm wrong.
No, we do stamp a number of things in-house. So if there's particular projects, yes, I will stamp them. And then
can you just offer some example? Maybe it's best that we perhaps dive into this in deeper study prior to the next board meeting, because I think we can lay out some of those past experiences so it's better understood by the board.
Yeah, and it's really more, than just a particular project. It's more your interaction with the county engineers, the DOT engineers, and so either you're relying, and they generally want to talk to the engineers who are at the local level, and so they are looking either to talk with the staff engineer, which is pretty typical, or they're looking to work with the consultant engineer. So I think it'd be difficult to try and put a number on that. So I guess to try and quantify it might be challenging, but I think it's worth looking at.
I think one thing that we will readily admit is that every organizational change, it doesn't matter whether it's this one or any other one, will come with a learned experience as a result. And that experience is going to inform us on whether it worked a lot, a little, or not at all. That then informs you on whether you need to make another adjustment. I've seen in my 10 years with the village, many adjustments we've made that we've had to, juke and jive to have it settle in right for our organization. I've seen it multiple times. I expect the same to be true here. Experience is going to tell us a lot upon an organizational shift. But I think we can spend some time doing a little deeper dive into exploring, making some educated guesses as to what that impact might be to the question that Bill brings up. So with that, other board questions?
I'll go around then. Kristen, any comments or questions? Gary Hertzberg?
My only question, since it's a new position to us, what is the background or of a community development person? They're not an engineer, they're not, what is their background that qualifies them for a position like this? How do we find someone?
Kevin, you're on mute. There you go.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if Chris wants to answer
Sure.
that, but why don't you go ahead, Chris? I have my thoughts,
Sure.
but go ahead.
Sure. Mainly they have a urban planning background, and which has a lot of both planning, which is a very technical aspect of it, plan reviews, things of that sort. Usually they have a master's degree in urban planning and public administration. The school at UWM, Planning and Urban Development, produces many of these folks throughout the Wisconsin. So it's usually someone who is trained to be a planner and a manager of the department. Very common, and they have very good technical skills. So
My experience with community development directors, as far as I know them, they're also sort of masterful at coordinating and fostering discussions and engagements. In this case, we would see the role of economic development director being part of community development director. So the kind of the multiple aspects of development are rolled into that, which also isn't unusual. I mean, they go hand in hand. Kevin, you're gonna.
I would just add, typically community development director also have a good handle on development finance. Would be a really good asset to have somebody on your team that can put together financing packages, with lenders, but also with federal or state agencies that might have a variety of financing opportunities available. Also, obviously, TIF, tax incremental financing. They typically, community development directors, as Todd mentioned, are very resourceful in putting together deals, is what it comes down to.
Any other questions, Gary? You're muted. Nope. Okay. Nyla, any questions? Okay. Aaron, any questions?
Just one, but first, I was excited to see the communication manager. I think I've talked to someone about that, maybe Todd, but I think that would be really beneficial to the village, and both internally and externally. So we talked about this, like the community development economic director, kind of our dream person or where they would come from. But do you guys see, maybe more of a question for staff, their role with housing, like fulfilling some of these things we've been working on?
if I may, several examples where the community development director is also the works on the housing authority side, if the community has a housing authority. In my past, I've used the community development director to run all the housing programs. This is when I was in Shorewood, and there was we had a few programs out there. So definitely part of a housing initiative, it would be the community development directors within their expertise.
Okay. Any other questions, Aaron? Okay, thank you. Phil?
Well, it's an awful lot to digest, and I'm glad we're going to take some time to figure this out. But I find it hard to believe that, and I've never seen it happen in the past, where you add all these layers of management and save money. Management doesn't like to work. Management likes to direct. And I just find it hard to believe that savings are going to result from this. And I'm not against spending more money as we grow, but I'm looking forward to more time to look at this.
And Bill Random, anything else for you?
I guess I'm just looking for real costs, and I'm always a little worried when we throw away, like I call engineering maybe hard science, that we throw it away and we're not keeping it in-house so that we have somebody to talk to about it on a daily basis. I just think that's a mistake. I think many of them, the things that we're repairing in this town were based on some mistakes that happened because we didn't have somebody like Kevin in the place. So just my thought. I want real costs. I don't think it's anything till I see the real costs.
All right, thanks for your comments. I'm going to reserve my comments because I don't really have any additional ones to what has already been stated. So I look forward to seeing what Todd and Caitlin bring back to us next time and information that they provide us as we go through this process. So again, Kevin, Chris, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Not anything else we need to do this evening, or we can move right
No,
on?
that's great. I appreciate the feedback. We'll see this back on the board agenda. And you're right. I think Bill said it. We or no, maybe Phil did. We have time to digest this. We don't have a retirement date certain from staff at this point. From Kevin or from Jim either. So we do have time to work on this.
Thanks, Todd. Okay, moving on. Next, we have updated discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Todd?
I'm going to share my screen yet again. I just want to let you know that I've.
We're skipping an item. We have next on the agenda is the 2021 Meadowbrook.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Approve proposals for the 2021 Meadowbrook and Prairie Park Tennis Court Rehabilitation Projects. I saw Sue McDade was in, so I'm assuming she's going to be introducing this.
Yep. So I don't have a lot of information to share. I think it was included in your packet. But this is a continuation of our plan to care for and upgrade tennis courts throughout the village. And this includes repairs to both Meadowbrook and Prairie Park, is within our budget allocation in the capital plan. And I would entertain any questions that any of you have.
Parks folks, Phil, any comments?
None other than when this was originally talked about, there was a much higher bid, and Sue broke it apart a little bit and got separate bids and etc. And we're saving quite a bit of money as a result of this, and it's a definite good bid that she's come up with. And I'm ready to make a motion when you're asked for it.
Nyla has a question. Go ahead, Nyla. You're still muted, Nyla. Still muted.
At the bottom, can you hear me now?
Yes, there you go.
On page 39 of 48, on the bottom of the estimate, in the fine print, it says crack repairs not sealed with armor crack repair system will open again over time sometimes as soon as the following year. HTCS cannot guarantee against pavement cracking. Usually fence post and net post footings will appear quickest due to the varying flexibility of the two surfaces. Could you explain that to me? And is this why you got a better bid? I mean, I don't know anything about this, so please explain it to me.
For sure. Very good question. I think what you're reading there is a standard disclaimer on any court surface contractor. It is our intention to repair all of the cracks that are existing on the court. As a matter of fact, in our contract documents, this bid is set on a particular measurement of cracks, and we'll go back out in the spring and reevaluate the court. So if anything has changed from fall to spring, to make sure that the contractor comes in and does a complete and thorough job of repairing the courts. I will say, however, tennis courts crack. This is not a fix. We're not going to fix them this year and they'll be good forever and ever. It is an ongoing process, but we are finding very good success with this new process of court repair that we've implemented in the last several years. What we used to do is just clear the courts, grind out the cracks, fill them, and then overlay with the surfacing material. And this is now more of a sheet that is laid down over the courts. It adheres to the courts, and then the cracks that are underneath that fabric do not come through as quickly and as often as they did in the old system. So we're very confident with this contractor and with the method that is included in the project.
Okay, any other questions? Please raise your hand. Okay, Phil, you were going to make a motion, I think.
I am. I move we approve the proposals from Holbrook Tennis Court Services LLC for the court's resurfacing and fencing work at both Meadowbrook and Prairie Parks.
A motion by Phil Willems and second by Gary Hertzberg. Any other comments? Raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, Caitlin, roll call vote, please.
Bill Branham,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Bill Willems,
Yes.
Erin Moran,
Yes.
Gary Hertzberg,
Yes.
Nyla Fry,
Yes.
Kristen Runge.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, then we're on to, as previously mentioned, our update and discussion on diversity, equity, inclusion initiative. Todd.
Yeah, one thing that I have done just to kind of increase our transparency and awareness of the work that we're attempting to do is include information on the village website about our DEI work, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if you go to Waunakee.com under village services, right under the government tab, I've got diversity, equity, and inclusion here. Now I'll mention that I don't put this information, I'm not putting this information on our website to tout what we've done. Quite honestly, it shows how much we haven't done and how much is yet to do. So, but I do want to work to keep our citizens informed of our work. I'm going to be, as we work on our policies, which is part of our University Year project, I'll be sharing them here. I'll have uploaded the resolution passed by the board in October, both the English and Spanish version, hopefully tomorrow. I know Caitlin's working on getting me the final signed versions of those. We'll then have more information on the community learning project. You've heard about this already. That's being done in conjunction with WNC and the school district. And we're rolling that out this month. And then here are the 6 University Year projects, all of which relate to matters of social justice, racial equity, inclusion, and civility. So again, as I pointed out, that is, it definitely reminds me of how much more we have to do. But I want you to be aware that we're working to share the information on our efforts with the community.
All right, thanks, Todd. Any comments, questions from other board members? So I'm just going to say that, or point out that I did have a resident in the community ask if we could get a menorah placed in the park with our rotary lights. And I approached Phil, since he heads that whole thing up. And we were able to have several of our board members and Todd contribute, and we were able to get a menorah into the park with our lights this year. So I'm happy to see that, and I appreciate all that gave for that. So just giving that update. Yeah, Phil.
I want to report that the exact number of candles were lit on the correct nights every night. Because in order for that to be right, you have to start on the first day of Hanukkah and light the initial candle and one more, and then you keep moving across. And it's very time consuming, but it was well worth it. Everybody seemed to enjoy the addition. And by the way, we had a record year despite the COVID thing in our participation and donations and drive-throughs, etc. We might have had 25, 30% more cars than we ever had to go through that display.
Perfect. Make sure you thank the Rotary for all they do with that, Phil, for the board as well as the residents. So appreciate that. And thanks for taking that extra time to take care of the menorah.
Yeah, it was great, all except for one inflatable snowman.
Yeah, we don't need to discuss that tonight. So, all good. So I appreciate it. Todd, thank you for that update. Let's get moving on. Next, we have discuss and take action on conceptual development agreement and TIF assistance request for occupancy expansion. Todd, are we introducing or stating anything before we go into closed session?
Very briefly, that Brian and I have been working with the parameters given to us by the village board at your closed session at your last meeting to negotiate potential terms of a development agreement. We've had several back and forth with Octopi and have terms that we'd like to review again with the village board in closed session as we're still in negotiation with Octopi.
Okay.
Brian, is there anything else you want to share in open session?
Nope, I think you covered it, Todd.
And I do expect, I mean, we'll come out of closed session. I think still in that we're still in a negotiation mode. And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't expect formal action or announcement of anything after our closed session this evening.
No, I would agree with that. I really believe the agreement's going to have to come back for another board meeting, at least one more board meeting. I would think one more, but
okay.
And then I think that there's a good chance that we could probably have a discussion, an open session at that one.
Okay, so my expectation is everybody certainly attending is welcome to stay, but my expectation is after we resume this meeting, probably the only action involved will be adjournment. But you're welcome to stay. This will still be on Facebook and it will be recorded and placed on YouTube as well. But at this point, Chris is going to do a motion, and when after that occurs, all the board members will leave to a different meeting that they have a link for. And then I'll put up a slide that indicates we're in closed session until we return.
Okay, so I'm going to read mine first. The village board may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin statute 19.851E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating investing of public funds or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The village board may reconvene in open session and discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in closed session. So I would look for a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Motion by Gary Hertzberg,
Second,
second by Kristen Runge. Caitlin, roll call vote, please.
Erin Moran,
Yes.
Gary Hertzberg,
Yes.
Nyla Fry,
Yes.
Kristen Runge,
yes.
Bill Ranum,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Bill Willems.
Yes.
You are in closed session.
Phil, looks like you're back into the regular meeting. Hope you're on mute. That was pretty fast, everybody. Impressive.
We're getting good at this.
I don't know if you were on earlier, but I said it's a little nicer than shoveling into your office. Not that don't love your hospitality, but
Okay, so it sounds like we have nothing to report coming out of closed session, and we just need one final motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Sorry, Bill.
Motion by Gary Hertzberg and second by Phil. Bill Random is shut out of the adjournment tonight.
It's horrible. It's just such a bad day. I gotta show you my stomach now.
new year, new.
Roll call vote, please, Caitlin.
Nyla Fry,
Yes.
Kristen Runge,
Yes.
Bill Random,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
yes.
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Gary Hertzberg.
Yes.
You're adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
So long.
Say goodnight, Gracie.